Jack Smith's Deposition, Part 5. Bias, Conspiracy, Voting, and Retribution. Welcome to Law and Society. What I'm doing right now is going through Jack Smith's 8-hour deposition in parts and breaking it down by reading excerpts from the transcript. They're fairly self-explanatory, and the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because it is important for every American to remember what happened on January 6, 2021, and who is responsible for it. And Jack Smith's deposition makes that clear. So with what we're going to do now is we're going to go through questions and answers from members of Congress and Jack Smith. I'll read out the questions and then the answers. Do you think that it's important for our democracy to hold free and fair elections without interference or obstruction? Jack Smith, yes. What happens if there is election interference and the people who are responsible for that are not held accountable? Smith, it becomes the new norm, and that becomes how we conduct elections. And so the toll on our democracy, if you had to describe that, what would that be? Smith, catastrophic. And why were you willing to appear voluntarily in a public hearing? Smith, we conducted our investigation in a way that I'm proud of. I'm particularly proud of the people I conducted the investigation with, and I wanted to speak for them. Question, can you tell us why it's important for the American people to hear directly from you about your investigation, what you discovered, the process that you went through? Smith, there have been mischaracterizations about my work. We did our work in the best traditions of the department. And I know I keep coming back to this, but the attacks, the mischaracterizations that most offend me are not just prosecutors, but career FBI agents, support staff in the department. These people who devoted their lives to be public servants. They're not self-promoters. They're not people who like to go in front of the cameras and defend themselves. And I feel that they have been vilified in a way that I think is awful. Question, what's the effect of that on our democracy? Smith, well, I think it drives people away from public service. Question, have you yourself been intimidated as a result of the actions that you took in this case? Smith, I am not going to be intimidated. Question, have you been threatened? Answer from Smith, yes. Question, did you accept the role, as some have suggested, because you had animus towards President Trump? Smith, no. Did you accept the role, as some have suggested, because you hope to influence the 2024 presidential election in favor of the Democratic nominee? Smith, no. Question, did you accept the role because you thought it would help the Democratic nominee by prosecuting Donald Trump before the election took place in 2024? Smith, no. Question, take the same facts but insert a president who was a Democrat. Would you have still accepted the role as special counsel? Smith, 100%. Question, you added something which I think was very interesting, which was a conspiracy to violate rights, which is something that we hadn't done, meaning the January 6th Select Committee. This is Representative Raskin. And I wonder if you would take a moment to expound on why you thought you had sufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there was conspiracy to violate the rights, the voting rights of the people. Smith, sure. The right to vote in a presidential election is one of the most sacred rights that America has. Americans have. And in this particular case, we had strong evidence that the defendants in this case sought to interfere with, obstruct, injure that right. We had evidence and just a couple of examples where Trump was asking local officials to find 11,000 votes. When you find 11,000 votes, you're diluting other people's votes. We had evidence that they were targeting certain states and particularly certain parts of certain states, generally urban parts of states, to have those votes thrown out with no factual basis whatsoever. I believe we cited this in our final report, but there's even statements to co-conspirators in this case, at least one that's coming to mind now, specifically saying, we want to get rid of these votes. We want to subtract them. And that diluting of the vote count in that way, there is very strong precedent for that being a violation of the statute that we charged. Representative Raskin, there were 60 federal or state court decisions rejecting claims of electoral fraud, electoral corruption that had been brought by President Trump or his teammates. To what extent did that figure into your analysis of that problem? Smith, well, the lawsuits, we made clear in our indictment that they were proper ways to dispute an election. And asking for an audit, which President Trump did, I believe in only 2 of the states that were in question, that's a way you can do that. Filing suits, completing legal and proper way to do that. But in this case, those lawsuits were part of our proof that put President Trump and his co-conspirators on notice. The suits, their results, and the things that the court said in finding those suits were with suits without merit put him, well, one component of evidence that put him on notice that these allegations were false. Filing the lawsuit absolutely, clearly is something you can do. They were probative evidence of the criminal intent in this case for those limited reasons I just suggested. Now on the matter of retribution. So everyone was fired. You're here on a deposition. Your lawyers lost their security clearance. It seems like it meets not only the description of definition of retribution in Webster's, it seems like it is exactly what Trump's chief of staff was talking about. Smith, I have no doubt that the president wants to seek retribution against me. I have no doubt that that's the intent. So I am eyes wide open that this president will seek retribution against me if he can. I know that. I don't frankly connect that with this hearing. I think people who know me and have known my reputation would know that it would not end well if someone tried to pressure me to move a case in one direction or the other that was not supported by the law. I wouldn't stand for it. I would also say the people who worked in my office wouldn't stand for that either. So that's those are the excerpts that I wanted to read you about the bias that came into this Jack Smith's investigation. And you hear these questions are fairly self-explanatory, and I absolutely love the fact that Jack Smith is not going to be intimidated, and every chance he gets, he connects what this hearing is about, which is what Donald Trump did to our democracy on January 6, 2021. And he does that in an expert manner. As we go forward in the following episodes, you will see when he's asked questions even by Republicans. And those questions backfire quite spectacularly. At least when you read it, it's a little nerdy for me to say that. Anyway, with that said, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, everybody. Take care.